Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Blinn.
I'm Michael.
This is Legally Speaking. Today, we're going to talk about what not to put in a will. So,
What not to put in a will, and maybe where to put some of those things.
yeah, maybe a better place to put them.
Sure.
So, one of the things that I think is interesting is that in the state of Illinois, you are not allowed to write your own will. So a lot of states allow you to do what's called a holographic will. If you put it in writing yourself and you sign it, some states that's valid. In Illinois, that is not valid. So that's a do not do right from the get-go.
Yeah, I think, there's one exception to that is if you do handwrite your will and you sign it, if you have two unrelated or uninterested witnesses witness that handwritten will, it's still valid. But if it's just the decedent's handwriting and their signature only, Illinois says that's out.
Yep, no good. So I guess getting over that hurdle, if we have somebody that knows what they're doing, hopefully writing the will, we won't have these problems. But we see them from time to time, so I think they're worth mentioning. I think the first biggest one that I get a question about a lot is, I want to be cremated or I want to be buried in such and such cemetery. And personally, I don't think those are things that should be in a will. Why do you think that might be?
Well, usually funeral is scheduled pretty shortly after somebody dies. A lot of times family members are dealing with other things rather than trying to locate a will and meet with an attorney to figure out what the will says. Typically, this first step is get the individual buried, talk to the funeral home director, get a death certificate, and then meet with an attorney. Well, if you meet with the attorney after mom or dad has been buried and there's a burial direction in the will and you didn't follow that, now you're left with the dilemma of, do I leave status quo and know that I didn't follow my loved one's wishes, or do I contemplate exhuming the body? I mean, I think it could get really messy really quick.
I think it could. I think to me, that's better left for some sort of pre-planned or prepaid funeral arrangements where you arrange that with the funeral home directly so they know, when that time comes, exactly what they're supposed to do. And I think that that's a better alternative than putting it in the will. I mean, you could mention it in the will, I guess, that, I have a prepaid funeral at such and such. And I don't know, that's to me is a better alternative than just leaving it in the will, because it's, like you said, later on down the road where that gets looked at sometimes. And I think the next one goes along those same lines that I have is organ donation.
Yeah, so in the state of Illinois, by default, through the DMV, you can have your organ donation designation put on your driver's license. Now, not everybody has a driver's license, not everybody has a state ID, but there are other ways to notify medical professionals that you want to be an organ donor. But the same policy goes there, is if it's in your will and you've already been buried and there hasn't been any organs donated, then your loved ones are again stuck in a dilemma of, well, do we leave status quo or do we talk about exhuming the body again? Which I would imagine the organs are probably not going to be good at that point anyways.
You have a pretty limited time frame on that, and that's I don't know. I'm an advocate of organ donation personally. I think it's a really good thing. I don't know a lot about it, but there is a way in our iPhones that are attached to our hands at all times now to put emergency access information in there so that first responders and things like that can get access to it, even if they don't know your passcode. So, that's the technological world that we're living in and going toward. So that's probably a good way to do that too.
Yeah. And
a lot of details.
Yeah. And I think both of those first 2 points kind of go in line with this third point of why, if you want to leave a certain gift or you want to do something specific in your will, and then you want to leave reasons for that decision, we believe it's better left out of the will, because number one is you've got a public record. A will is filed in the county where the person passes away. So that will is accessible by the public. People can read through it. So if you want to disinherit Johnny because he did XYZ to you, you don't need to air out that dirty laundry in your will. Likewise, that public record, that will, you don't need to put your wishes with respect to organ donation or with burial directions, because again, that's private information. You keep that to yourself. Let your loved ones know that information. You don't need to air all that out in a what's likely to become a public record someday.
I agree with that, and I think it's I don't know, just kind of tacky mostly, but that's not to say that it can't be said. I mean, I have some practical instructions with my estate planning documents, like here's where my accounts are, here's, some of the ways that you're going to have to access this stuff, or, some notes to the people that need to know some of that information. And if I wanted to, be petty about it, I could leave that type of letter to that person with those documents. And that's not something that's going to be deposited in the courthouse. It's not going to become public record. It's just going to, I don't know, haunt those people after I'm dead, I guess. I don't know. But I think some of those gifts kind of speak for themselves. Some of the lack of gifts kind of speak for themselves. And there's legal reasons to say, I'm disinheriting this person knowingly, but we don't need to get into the details of that, in my opinion. Some of the other things, one of the list here, I guess, is we don't want to list specific gifts in the will that have beneficiary designations attached for them or pass in different ways. So if I have a trust that owns a piece of real estate and that trust says it's going to go to Michael at my death, I don't want to put in my will that piece of real estate is supposed to go to my wife, because it's going to create confusion. It's going to create bad feelings. It's probably going to create litigation, and it's going to go to Michael. If it's the same if I list a beneficiary of a life insurance policy or retirement account or something like that, we don't want to get into conflicts in the estate planning documents, I guess is the point of that.
Yeah, I think what it could do is it could raise questions about the either the testator or the settler of the trust, whether or not they had mental capacity, if they were confused as to what they own. That's one prong to determine mental capacity or legal capacity to execute a will in Illinois, is you have to know what property you own. And you have to dispose of that property according to a plan. So if you have two conflicting plans, I think it could raise some question about whether or not you had capacity to execute those documents in the first place. And, one of the first things I tell clients when I meet with them with estate planning is update all of your beneficiaries. Your beneficiaries are going to be able to file a claim with that account, or a claim on that account with a death certificate. And those financial institutions, life insurance companies, whatever they may be, they're going to make that payment directly to the beneficiary. So by the time you get to the point where you're reading the will or you're probating the will, again, that asset is likely already gone, and it creates a lot of confusion. And then it gives somebody that receives a beneficiary interest in an account kind of a dilemma again of, well, in mom's will, she said this account should be divided between these 10 people, but I was the sole beneficiary on the account. What do I do now? Well, technically, I'm the one that owns that property. And if I want to make sure that it gets to the other 9 beneficiaries, I'd have to gift that from my own assets.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's probably a malpractice problem for an attorney that drafted an estate plan like that too, but we won't get into that. I think the last one I had on my list was goes along with some of the first ones we talked about, and that's whether or not I want to be on life support if I get to that point, if I want to be kept alive by artificial means. And that is not something that should be in the will. That should be in a living will declaration or a healthcare power of attorney, something like that, that's going to be on file with the doctor, so that they know at that time while you're alive, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, and the agent can make that determination then.
Yeah, it's likely that your loved ones are not going to be reading your will when deciding whether or not life-sustaining treatment is necessary or appropriate. So, in our estate planning documents, healthcare power of attorney, you have a decision to make with respect to life-sustaining treatment, and you can make, you don't have to select a general, or you don't have to make a general selection. You can add more detail into it if you wanted to, and that's the correct avenue to do that. Again, that's not going to become public record. It's not going to be something that is discovered after somebody's passed away and maybe they've been on life support for a couple years and then you find out in their will they did not want that.
I think that's all I wrote down for my list. Those are the do nots of wills in Illinois. We've got a big game Saturday, U of I versus Rutgers. I hear you're headed that way.
We're going to go over there. My wife and I make the day trip over to Champaign. We only have to get a babysitter for a few hours, so it'll be nice. No overnight, no late night driving. Should be a good game.
I'll have fun. I'll be watching fifth graders play basketball at that time, so I'll keep some score updates going on my phone, but hopefully we can knock out Rutgers. It looks like they're top 25 now.
Nice. Illinois ought to be there soon.
I hope so. Well, that's all we've got for today. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Take care.